Hey, I'm Doug. Welcome to Small Group Training. In this session, I'm going to talk about where to find teaching content for your group meetings. But before I jump into that, it's important to understand the goal of your small group. In other words, what do you want your group to become? Our goal for Saddleback small groups is for every group to be healthy. But what exactly does that mean? What is a healthy group? Well, the Bible makes it clear that there are 5 things that every person, every church, and by extension, every small group has been created for. We call these things the 5 biblical purposes. The purposes are described in several places throughout the Bible, including 2 passages which are often called the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. Both the Great Commandment and the Great Commission were given by Jesus himself. Jesus gave the Great Commandment when he was asked by some religious leaders what the most important command in the Bible was. And Jesus said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands." From the Great Commandment, we discover 2 of God's purposes for our lives. We are to love God. This is the purpose which we call worship. And we are to love others, meaning that we ought to use our gifts and talents and abilities to serve them. This is the purpose which we call ministry. And Jesus gave the Great Commission to his disciples after his resurrection from the dead and shortly before he left them to return to heaven. The Great Commission gave instructions to his disciples as well as for each of us who would choose to follow him later on. Jesus said, "Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you." From the Great Commission, we find the other 3 purposes. We are to go and make disciples of all nations. This is the purpose we call evangelism. We are to baptize them, meaning that we're to bring them into his family, which is the church. This is the purpose which we call fellowship. And we are to teach them, and that's the purpose we call discipleship. So the 5 purposes are fellowship, discipleship, ministry, evangelism, and worship. A healthy Christian is a follower of Christ who balances these 5 purposes in their life. A healthy church is a church that balances the 5 purposes, and a healthy small group is a group that balances the 5 purposes. So when it comes to teaching content for your group, you'll want to have content which will balance the 5 purposes within your group. To help you do this, we've created a series of curriculum called God's Design for Your Life. It will help you and your group learn how to balance the 5 biblical purposes, both in your group and in your individual lives. The series consists of 6 studies. The first study is called God's Design for Your Life, Living in Community. It'll give you an overview of what a healthy small group is, introduce you to each of the purposes, and inspire you with stories of people who are part of Saddleback's small group network. The other 5 studies will show you how to practice each of the 5 purposes in your group and in your lives. And by the time you complete these studies, you'll have some basic practices in place that'll help you have a healthy, growing small group. And to get started on God's Design for Your Life, log into mysaddleback.com. From there, you can find this study as well as others to use in the future. You can also find curriculum by visiting your Saddleback campus bookstore. If your group's already completed God's Design series, there are lots of other curriculum options which you can browse. And before we end this session, I'd like to mention one other resource that would be very important as you continue to lead your group. And I'm talking about your community leader. By now, your community leader has probably already contacted you. Your community leader is your personal contact and dedicated resource at Saddleback Church. He or she is there to make sure you have everything you need at all times. If you have questions, concerns, or need help with anything at all, just turn to your community leader. Their goal is to help your group thrive and gain strength over time. If you're not sure who your community leader is, just email smallgroups@saddleback.com and we'll put you in touch with your leader right away. On behalf of the Saddleback Small Groups team, thanks for watching and have a great week.